I don't know why I went extra for that one. So, for this particular round of reactions, I've been kind of like reminiscing about like older stuff. Last video, I did a bunch of high school things, and for this one, I'm gonna go with a video or a band I reacted to like quite a while ago that hasn't been in the mentions. No one's asked for reactions for it, but like I wanted to revisit it just because it's been quite a while. A while. Um, Band is called Russian Circles. Since no one's requested anything, I came across what is this called? Gnosis. It was on my home page like a while ago, and I made mention of it in my book. Just recollection, own personal recollection. Uh, the last track I did by them was a studio recording kind of thing where it was really bass forward, like really on the low end of the spectrum as far as like frequencies go. And it was really cool. I enjoyed it like a great deal. It sounded really like dark and depressing, which is my specialty, my style. I mean, style. A little over 8 minutes. This is the official video. Go! Lots of threes. Which makes sense. Gnosis. it's building, and I hate to stop it. But a lot of this video like editing is so kind of like sophisticated looking. There's lots of like really classical art kind of things that are happening. So it's interesting to me that at the beginning that um, fire filter looked so out of place because everything is seems to like transition into each other like pretty seamlessly for the most part. But that at the beginning that fire background seemed really out of place. But I do enjoy all the classical art. There's lots of shots of like heads, and then there was a headless thing kind of there at the same time. But there's lots of birth, lots of cells dividing and expanding and evolving. You have the baby, like all those growth and birth kind of things, and then lots of threes. Because it Gnosis, you think of like religion, and you think of like the Holy Trinity. This theme for the night seems to be like the Holy Trinity, like that kind of thing. So it's supposed to be magic, the number 3. If you believe in magic, and I hope you do. It's always right there when the big red that's a clown. That's a clown song. But yeah, it's interesting how the song so far seems like it's just building. Like it's not verse to chorus, verse to chorus. It's just like a constant build. And since the primary focus of the video, the narrative, seems to be like a baby or like cells, and they're growing and dividing and becoming more complex, and it's about growth, expansion. So Gnosis, it might be like an expansion of like thought processes and that kind of thing. But it's interesting that the narrative of the video seems to mimic the growth of the progression of the music. Go back a little. I do enjoy all this art also. pause it again. So my definitions of what I assume things are may or may not be correct, but I always assume like Gnosis. I think of like agnostic. Agnostic means you don't believe or you don't know necessarily in a God. So agnostic, Gnostic, Gnosis. Gnosis has to do or deal with like religion or like God or that kind of thing. And it's interesting, the visuals, very timely, very apropos about what's going on in the world. Like the theme that I said earlier about like things seeming to grow and to expand and to evolve seems to be present in this visual narrative. Um, the art stylings got more complex and more realistic as opposed to the beginnings where it was more just like general figures, and then it got more into like shading, chiaroscuro shading. Excuse me, that's a strong bad joke, but also I burped in the middle of that. And then the cells, they're growing, they're evolving, and then you start to get into machinery and things get more complex. And so, like, it's societies building. So, Gnosis, God, um, cells and babies, people. So, as people were evolving, um, you start to see more strife and struggle between each other. Uh, Whatever that has to do with gods, there are certain points you can take, certain sides you can take as far as that. But it seems to be that there was candles. It seemed like people were praying. So as things seem to be getting bleaker, you see in this narrative that people seem to be like praying for like a resolution, praying for like an intervention, whereas the opposite could also be true as far as that while things are progressing, the strife is being caused by all that devotion, because that tends to be the cause of most wars and most struggles is religion. As much as and this might be a hot take, but as much as religion proposes to be a solution and to be composed of love, it is generally the reason and cause of most conflicts and most strife. So things tend to go poorly and badly because different religions conflict with each other as opposed to people just growing and enjoying the fruit of their labor. So you can take a couple of different things. You can take a couple of different approaches to this. Uh, where my head happens to be at right now, and also I'm atheist. I've mentioned that in other videos. So it's a lot of religious talk and a lot of religious metaphors. I understand them. Half the time they're laughable to me, particular. And again, that's just me. Whatever you want to do, whichever way you want to lead your life, as long as you don't harm anyone, I don't care. It's when you do harm people that I care. And religion generally is the cause of most conflicts. Let's go back a little more. But like, it seems like this guy's very pensive. There's water on him. It's a metaphor for tears. Lots of pain and suffering in the world. Again, like things seem to be getting more complex. They seem to be growing in the video narrative. but also you can view that as becoming very desolate and being very once you start to get into that chaos versus order dynamic, the order can seem to be very empty because then like choices seem to be removed. But then again, if like you're following a book of rules, choices are kind of removed then as well. Go. So it makes sense that the fire thing that I was complaining about at the beginning seemed to really like it didn't necessarily flow with everything, considering everything has to do with like expansion and evolution. So it makes sense that the beginning of the video wouldn't necessarily be as complex and meld as much together as the rest of it, because like everything's a progression. So the very beginning, the inception, uh, of the video would be very basic and not rendered as well. Hmm. It's funny because I watched a Fear Factory video earlier. So like everything in my head's kind of like oriented towards like machines, and towards the end of this video it had to do it had to deal it dealt with like mass produced robots and like and that given that the track is Gnosis and in my head I'm thinking religion produces robots. It produces people who think exactly in this particular way. Uh, I hesitate to get too in depth into my particular leanings and what it is I think, just because like I've had conversations with my parents about this kind of thing, and when I make points I can see the light in their eyes kind of dying because it once you believe in something and you hold on to it for such a long time of your life, once you realize that it's not real or that you've been lied to, there's a big portion of your life that you begin to view as having been wasted. And I don't know how much into this I want to get into. But essentially, I can see this from both viewpoints. How, like, oh, if you're anti religion, then you are a robot. You are this asshole that just believes in science. And isn't that the same thing as religion? And, like, I can see that. But for the most part, so Gutenberg, printing press, was what, 1400s? 1300? No, 1400s, I think. Printed the Bible. Gutenberg's Bible. That's 1400s. AD, after the death of Christ. 1400 years after that. And during that same time frame, and even before, most everyone was illiterate. None of them could read. Hardly anyone could read. So you had to rely, before printed copies, and I know Asia had a printing press before Gutenberg, but America doesn't like you to know that. They like to think that Europe. So again, I didn't want to get into all this stuff, especially with what's going on in the world right now. Is that Europe and the Western society has a specific narrative that they want you to follow. And before the printed Bible, before the printing press, everything was handwritten and passed along by memory. And the stuff that was being written, like more than half the people were illiterate. Like 90% of the people were illiterate, and the people who were writing stuff, they were translating it, and then they were getting it by word of mouth. And have you ever played Telephone? Are you familiar with the game Telephone, where you like line up 10 people or more, or however many, and this person says something to this person, and this person says it to the next person, says it to the next person, and you see how the original message is transformed once it arrives to the last person. Also, there's context. 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years plus. If I write a satirical piece, but the person who reads it doesn't know that it's satirical, and they believe it to be my actual feelings, they're going to interpret it in a completely different way from what I intended. Or if I make a joke or a reference, lost to sands of time, 2,000 years later, someone's going to pick that up, not understand the reference I made, and just assume I have a different meaning. Also, it's a different language. Um, Jesus was a Jew, and so were his acolytes, his 12 followers. I've never known an Israeli named John or Paul or David or like Mark, because those aren't Jewish names, and those aren't Aramaic names. Like, I'm getting into some trouble with this. Just because, again, as an atheist, I view all religions as bullshit. The same way I don't believe in Thor. I don't believe in like a Christian God or like anything. Like it's all made up father figure fantasy bullshit stuff. So, given that this track is called Gnosis, I don't necessarily know what the message that they're trying to get across is. Because there are conflicting viewpoints that you can take on this, as you can with pretty much any idea. Excuse me. But the thing the way I'm interpreting it is that since it has a lot to do with like evolution and cells and then babies and then art styles evolving and then cities evolving and then you arrive at like robots. It's essentially saying like you're evolving into a way where like if you're a robot at the end, robots aren't necessarily viewed as a good thing. Like you're kind of viewed as a follower. You're following programming, um, and the way I'm interpreting it is that if you're following programming, and the song is entitled Gnosis, and it has to deal with religion in the backdrop, religion is programming. And so you are a robot if you are religious, essentially. There's nothing wrong with being spiritual. Spirituality and religion are two completely different things. Religion is just something that the ruling class uses to keep you from rebelling. Essentially, the spirituality is just you finding meaning in life. So those are two different things. I wonder if this video is gonna get blocked. Because there's been one other time where like I went into like religion, and that video got blocked. I did very good at stopping the video enough so that it wouldn't get copyright stricken. But like I think my religious talk kind of like nerfed it and got it like taken down. I'm drinking. So, I tend to react to a lot of black metal and just dark shit. So like Satanism, also bullshit. Everything is bullshit to me. Like when I look at people reference like God, I view it as more like when people reference like historical characters from fiction. It's like, oh, this person's referencing Batman or Mickey Mouse, Jesus. Like it's a character. It's something that was made up. Say, oh, well, but there was a real person named Jesus. Sure. It doesn't mean he was the son of God. Watch this. I am the son of God. If you believe in religion, then you have to have faith. That means it's true. You can't debate it because I've said it. So if you have faith, then you believe it. And if you say, no, you aren't, then you don't have faith. Oh, see how that works? Prove me wrong. Ha! You can't. So it's the same thing. When anyone who decries it as being like blasphemous is like, oh, how does that not apply to Jesus of Nazareth? Who, by the way, was black. That's a fun thing about this whole Israeli situation is like, oh, you're native to the land. Why do you have the highest skin cancer rate of